Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me is Gio
Yo, yo, yo.
and Mac.
Good evening.
And we are back today after a few weekday Premier League games, and we've got to chat about those as well. We will be teeing up some upcoming weekend Premier League action. I know my co-hosts Gio and Mac are very excited to get straight into that action. But before we do, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. Lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into the biggest match of the weekend, guys. Man U at Arsenal, a game that is going to have a lot riding on it with how these teams do in terms of where they end up at the end of the season. Now, this game is being played at Arsenal, so Mac, let me hear your thoughts on what you think could take place in this game.
I feel like it'll play out very similar in a lot of ways to the previous matchup where Manchester United beat Arsenal 3-1. Not meaning the result. I feel very much the momentum and the play style of the game. I think Arsenal are going to come into this with, in terms of trying to be able to keep possession, trying to be able to play in a high press, be very kind of proactive in terms of how they create opportunities. And in that matchup, looking back and rewatching key points of that game, Arsenal, in my opinion, were the much better team. It was unfortunate, just some small mistakes, a couple of errors when they were looking to change formation really took them out of the game. But otherwise, I think soundly they were the superior team. The difference would be is, of course, that's the reason why we play sports, is that you play the game out, kind of the underdog can still win. So who knows if that result will kind of repeat in Manchester United. And I would argue probably coming in their best form, probably their best time that they've had the last couple of seasons at this given moment. It'll be interesting to see if they can come out and be a different animal, a different opposition for Arsenal to really get at. But I think overall, coming off of a very therapeutic win against Spurs, of course, Spurs in the most recent round of fixtures for Arsenal, they might come in on very much on a high, looking to be able to kind of snowball. Whereas Manchester United, even though overall they've been playing very, very well, they do have a disappointing recent result. And in that game didn't look the best, even though overall they're a completely different kind of opposition than the first matchup. So overall, I feel like Arsenal see themselves as favored going into this matchup, and hopefully further spread kind of a lead and get that 8-point lead back above Manchester City for the Premier League title.
Yeah, Mac was just referencing Man U dropping points midweek to Crystal Palace, 1-1 and to that game. But apart from that, Man U have been on a great recent run of games, as Mac mentioned. So, Gio, what do you expect to happen in this game, given that in the first game, Man U set up more in a counter-attacking style, and the game being at Arsenal this time around, we would expect Arsenal to dominate possession. Do you think Man U will set up in that type of form again? And what do you expect to happen in this game?
Yeah, no, I think they definitely should come out and play and focus more on that counterattack game. Simply because, one, Arsenal's playing at home, so they're gonna want they're gonna use the crowd to their advantage, get that momentum going, try to get a goal early. Yeah, so I think sitting on a counterattack type style would be the best way forward. Now, and that type of play does open up a lot of space for Rashford, where he can take defenders on one-on-one. Helps Anthony as well, who also likes to take players on one-on-one and cut in and have a shot on his left foot. So, yeah, I think all of those reasons are why they should continue playing at a counterattack. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about, Casemiro in and out of the game, but they played the first game without Casemiro as well, and they're quite successful there. Obviously, we've seen the difference he has made, in terms of his game and how he contributes to the team. But that doesn't speak on how decent Fred has played when he did come on, or when he does come on. Eriksen's still there. He was a crucial part throughout the season. So. Now, am I worried? Yeah, because Odegaard is Odegaard right now. He's on a run of form. and Manchester United defense, there have been times where it's been a little shaky. So, they have to be careful of that one through ball that he plays that can really turn the game upside down.
Okay, yeah. You mentioned Gio Casemiro is missing out due to yellow card accumulation. Now, they typically play a 2 in midfield, so that would likely be McTominay or Fred coming in to fill in that position. Interesting to note, the game that they played before the Crystal Palace game was the Manchester derby, which saw Fred being essentially man marking Kevin De Bruyne in that game. Do you, Gio, expect something similar to happen with Odegaard, or do you think they should go with a more holding player like McTominay to plug up the holes in midfield, which Arsenal will try to exploit, next to Eriksen?
Honestly, I would love to see that. I would love to see that. And it's almost becoming, a thing of the past before as well. Sir Alex Ferguson used to, call upon Park Ji-sung to do that, when they had big games, particularly the one when they played, I think it was AC Milan, where he had to mark Pirlo. So it's a method they have used before. Do I want to see it again? Absolutely, because it limits his touches, and as long as he doesn't have the ball at his feet, then he can't make that pass. So logically, it does make sense, and the less times, the fewer times Fred touches the ball, the fewer mistakes are there as well. So all in all, great plan. Please do it. And yeah, I think Manchester United will benefit from that.
I guess same question to you, Mac, but at the same time, should Arsenal change anything on their end after that comfortable win, I would say, against Spurs?
Absolutely not. I think they're going to run out the exact same formation. I think week in, week out, it's a benefit to them because they don't. Currently, they're in the Europa League, but there hasn't been games playing right now, so they don't have to worry as much in regards to rotation for their team. And this is probably the key point of their season, where if they can sustain the level that they've been playing, they're going to come out as serious title challengers. And chase and make sure that City kind of has a battle to the rest of the season. And because even as of right now, Arsenal currently do have a lead. So I don't think there'll be any change there. I think the change in regards to the Manchester United point is the interesting conversation piece, in my opinion, is the Antony spot. If he plays, does he not, or does he not play? Because in their round of fixture against Manchester City, the key point and really turning point for me was Garnacho coming on and having a direct impact on the game, and Antony floating in and out of it. It'll be interesting to see if they do run a 3-man midfield of, let's say, if it's Eriksen, McTominay, and Fred all together at the same time. I think that would be a little bit more beneficial, because even in more so comparison to Manchester City, because they need Arsenal are going to utilize their wingers in one-on-one situations much more, and the wingers tracking back from Manchester United traditionally haven't been the greatest. So I think it might be a little bit beneficial to switch it up and doing a 3-man midfield if you're United, just for the coverage. The interesting part, though, like I said, is what to do with Antony then. He did play well in this reverse fixture when they initially matched up, but he hasn't had the greatest impact thus far. So who do you drop if that's the case? Is it Bruno? I doubt it. I think that Bruno would probably shift over to a right wing if that would be the case. I think that's what they did against City, if I remember correctly. So
right. Yep.
I think playing a similar formation like that, kind of copy and pasting your tactics, and hopefully you get a similar kind of offside call to your benefit in a way, I guess, but what can you do? I think that's their best path forward, is where they're going to clog up, wait for their moments, try to be very kind of be clinical in the chances that they do create. And in maybe the 65th, 70th minute, the game's still close, they could come on with the impact sub and change it up. I think that's their best game plan. But for Arsenal, their game plan should be dominate the first half, bang a couple of goals, and see this game out as early as possible. Because when they do score, they have the potential to score in bunches. And the earlier they score, the more they're going to ruin the Manchester United's plan to sit back and going to further expose themselves. Because just like the Spurs game, that Arsenal could have won that game 4-5-0 if they were a little bit more clinical up top. So overall, I think that you should have the exact same game plan.
Okay, just talking about the consistency that Arsenal have had in terms of form, I think a lot of that goes as well to the consistency in their team and the lineups that they put out week in, week out. Now, we know Gabriel Jesus is missing out for a couple more weeks at the very least, and so Arsenal have been linked with Leandro Trossard for a fee of around 27 mil. Mac, you mentioned here it's a done deal. Is it a done deal? I wasn't
we
sure.
we got the here you go from Fabrizio, so
Okay.
it's 100% done. It's it's 21 plus 6 on add-ons. That's the final total.
Yeah, hey, if Fabrizio says it's done, it's a done deal. So I guess, Gio, this signing makes perfect sense and reminds me of, I know I'm going to have to bring it to Liverpool, but reminds me of when Liverpool signed Diogo Jota from Wolves. I think it was at the beginning of the season, but it was a player that was ready for the Premier League, knows exactly how the league works, a player that was in form before he had that falling out with the Brighton coach, and has everything to prove. What do you think about this signing, Gio?
No, it's definitely a great player to add. You know, we know how hot he was early on in the season. So why not add another, gun to your arsenal for, to be a little punny there. But hey, those are the types of players you need to add who obviously are able to score in the Prem. That's all you can really ask for. There's no transitional period maybe for them to adjust their game to the Prem. So yeah, no, I think it was a very smart pickup. So hopefully they can use him. Obviously not against Man United. But my question to you is, you made that Jota reference. Do you think he is going to be as impactful as, say, a Diogo Jota was for Liverpool when he first got there?
Ooh, I don't think he will be right away, but it's a good long-term signing. I think he's late 20s, so he's right. So he's definitely a player that should be around his peak. So hopefully for him, he hits the ground running with Arsenal. I just think that because he is switching to such a intense system, I think it'll take some time for him to adjust. But hey, I think he is in the best position to be successful with the way he sort of finished that pre-World Cup part at Brighton, and then he did feature for Belgium in the World Cup. So all eyes are on him to sort of perform. Do you think, Mac, he can move Eddie Nketiah out of that number 9 position, or do you think he'll fit in somewhere else?
I think he fits in somewhere else. I see him as more of an alternative. It'll be interesting to see, because this is a signing, I guess, at the beginning of the season. If you ask Arsenal by January, do you think you'll make this type of signing? They'll say no. They're looking for more long-term solutions. But right now, they're in the position where they are trying to chase for the title. They are in the title race, where kind of more of these short-term signings can make sense given the circumstances. He individually, I see him as much more kind of a off striker, a winger type of player, similar to Martinelli. The good part is he's going to know going in. And I think this will be interesting in comparison to his playtime at Brighton, where he's not going to start. He's not going to start regularly. He's not going to play at a large minutes of Arsenal at full health. He's a rotational piece on the a rotational sub, maybe playing in cup games. Depending on the matchup, may get a Premier League game, but he's not going to be a consistent feature for the team, in my opinion. The way that if he does break into the lineup is where I would see Martinelli going to a striker position. I think that he's more inclined to that. And Trossard playing more on the wing, because that would be an easier transition, because it is a very different play style playing for Brighton than it is playing Arsenal. So in this short-term window you're looking at to have an impact, I think that's where he could potentially fit in. And I think that could be useful because in Nketiah, he's a very good finisher. I would argue he's very good on the counter, but he's not necessarily a pressing forward. He's not creative as much in terms of linking play with his teammates. And if Arsenal need that in an individual game, Martinelli's much better at providing that. And this still gives them another option on the wing, especially with Emil Smith-Rowe slowly coming back, but maybe not 100% where he should be. So adding a little extra depth, I think, makes sense, especially, of course, in regards to the Miguel Mudryk signing not taking place and him going to Chelsea instead. So this seems like much more a short-term piece, which I feel like makes sense to what Arsenal's looking to do, because I saw this comparison, and I apologize, I know I'm going on here, is that it's either when you're doing transfers like this for teams, you're either buying a house or a car. In terms of you're looking for something that's going to go down in value, like a car, but you need it right now. You have to be able to make use of it. Versus the house, that's long-term potential growth you're looking to grow. And the argument would be it doesn't matter as much for Arsenal because they already have so many houses, like Saka's age, Odegaard, Saliba. They have so many great young players. They don't need that. They need a car right now because they need to get to the finish line of this title race, and he's a player that can potentially help them do that.
Yeah, for sure. We'll be interested to see how he does. And so lastly, just to wrap up this game, Gio, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Weghorst started for Man U in the midweek game. Don't expect him to start, but what do you think will be the final result for this game?
Final result, I have 2-1 United.
Ooh, all right. This was obviously going to split our podcast hosts here. And so, Mac, give us your final prediction.
I think it's a flip of the Old Trafford game, so I'm going to go 3-1 Arsenal.
Ooh, all right.
Spicy.
You heard it here, guys. We have differing opinions, and so we'll definitely be covering that game in full on our next podcast. So let's move on to one other game taking place this weekend. Chelsea's at Liverpool, and how do I even preview this game? Because both teams, you would argue, are going through one of their worst periods in the last couple of years. Referenced it as, there's El Clasico. On Twitter, I found a post referencing it as El Shitico because of how poor both teams are doing. But hey, the first fixture of the season between these two teams was postponed, so we don't really have recent results to go off of. But this is a great building platform for both teams to sort of make another push, I guess, towards top four. And so, myself, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm wearing my Liverpool hat. This is the game, boys. We are back. Liverpool will take this. I hope. I'm very unsure how this game will go. So, Gio, can you give me an idea of how you predict this game will go?
If you guys know me, if you guys have been listening, I want madness. I want absolute madness. I want to see it. We probably won't see it, but I want to see a goal fest. I want to see, I want to see the guys who don't usually shine score. I want to see Pulisic score. I want to see, Mudryk come on and score. I want all of it. I want all the drama in this game. And then for, who wins, honestly, could I care less? Probably not. But, okay, if I had to pick a team, I want Liverpool to win. I want Chelsea to just sell players that they don't need, and they have an excess, and they'll probably continue to buy an excess of players that they don't need, and they'll just wither away because Todd Bowley seems to have an unlimited amount of money. So yeah, I just don't think Chelsea have it in them to come clutch in a big game, especially against such a big name club like Liverpool. I think Klopp's the better manager of the two. So yeah, I would definitely side with Liverpool here.
Okay, Mac, you just mentioned Mudryk signing for Chelsea instead of Arsenal. All eyes should be on him if he does feature in this game. What do you think will happen in this game?
It literally is impossible to know, because if you gave me 10 different variations of a Chelsea starting 11, I could say any of them are theoretically possible. They have so many pieces. I don't know what they're going to do. So how can I project how they're going to play or how well they'll perform against the Liverpool team, which are consistently not the greatest, but we know what they're trying to do. With Chelsea, I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know who they're going to play. I don't know anything about this team. They're confusing. In terms of the Mudryk signing, though, this is potentially, I'm sorry, Ray, but this might be the easiest matchup he could individually have going into Premier League game. There's a lot of expectations on his name. He comes in, starts on the left wing. He gets in behind Trent, drops him one or two times. The whole conversation around his transfer figure is going to completely change, right? Where everyone's like, "Oh, Arsenal missed out on this great player. Chelsea have signed a future star." And the whole conversation will change. Where a lot of people right now is like, "Why the hell did you spend so much money on a player that's only ever played in Ukraine?" So it'll be interesting to see. I think that matchup is absolutely fascinating. If he does feature, because theoretically he could not. They could start Sterling on the wing. they could. Well, the only thing that we can guarantee is Joao Felix is not playing. That's the only thing we can guarantee, right? So great signing. Overall, though, in my opinion, it's interesting because the Klopp's response to the midweek game against Wolves, where Liverpool won 1-0, and looked pretty good defensively, much better. Didn't concede many chances from what I saw. He said, just as you said, Ray, we're back, baby. This is the Liverpool of old. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with Gio. It's a little bit again. I have more information on them than I do on Chelsea, so I'm gonna go with the devil I know versus the devil I don't. It should be interesting though. I guess on the other side, I guess I'll ask you, Ray. I don't know if you've watched the midweek game, but generally speaking, if Van Dijk's not playing, Matip's the number one center back. Midweek game, it was Konate and Joe Gomez. Do you see that? They played well. Do you feel like that duo will start again, or Matip slides in there? What do you think happens? Because I think that's a key thing for them, is that they have a solid because they need the two defenders to be good there, because Trent's not helping.
Yeah, so Matip had a shocker in the Brighton game, and Gomez and Konate didn't face a lot from Wolves going forward. So, they may have looked better compared to Brighton, but again, Wolves didn't really offer a lot going forward, so it could be a little bit skewed in that sense. I do expect Matip to come back and play alongside Konate. It's something that Klopp is always loyal to his first team players. A lot of people are saying Basetic, the center mid who featured in this game, a lot of Liverpool fans online are calling for him to start in the Saturday game, Saturday game. I'm gonna have to break it to you guys. Fabinho will definitely start because that's what Klopp does. So hey, Klopp, at least we know what we get from Liverpool. Whether it's a great game or a poor game, that's to be decided on how, I guess, things fall. But that's the only thing that I'm concerned about for Chelsea. We don't know how Potter will change it. He might go back to his Brighton team that he left and ask them how they beat Liverpool so comfortably last week. So we'll see how it goes from them. Okay, so on that note, let's take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back previewing some more Premier League games. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our preview for match week 21 of the Premier League. The next game we're going to cover now is Newcastle at Crystal Palace. Mac, you were rewatching some of the scenes from their first game. I think it was in the EFL Cup where Newcastle won on penalties. It ended up 0-0, but you thought it was very exhilarating. Give us some of your thoughts on that and how you expect this game to play out.
Absolutely, and even their first matchup in the Premier League, which was a match week 6, if I remember correctly, these two teams, they were going at each other, and the only thing that really kind of stopped any goals from happening, because there's so many different opportunities, high expected goals. It was phenomenal space from goalkeeper like Guaita and Pope. Both have phenomenal games, both match days. So it's overall, these are two teams, when they come at each other, they just see red, but they just can't finish. It's a little bit weird. It'll be interesting if we actually do see a goal finally in this fixture, because it hasn't happened thus far this season, even though they've already played twice. But overall, I think in both of these teams where they are currently are very, very interesting. There has been much talk in regards to transfer rumors around each of them. I think Newcastle was just linked to a Brazilian player for like 16 mil or something like that. So we'll see. But overall, they're both very interesting teams that could shake up the Premier League and could still have a large impact on what happens going forward. But for this match day, Newcastle, who are, to be honest, the better team thus far this season, of course, and are right now in a Champions League position, traditionally against the big teams going to Selhurst Park, that's a tough match day. If they sit back, hit you on a counter, we've talked this about thousands of times, the Olise, Eze, Zaha, as long as Andre Ayew doesn't play, they have a chance to beat anybody, right? They can be a very interesting team. So even though Newcastle have a good run of form, I think Crystal Palace can give them a very tough match day for this game.
I think Gio will have an eye on how Newcastle continue to do with their run of form and their top 4 push. Gio, Mac made a good point there. It's interesting to see how Newcastle will play, given that they are favorites, but they are going to be playing at Crystal Palace. Now, one of the things that I think Newcastle are lacking in midfield is sort of that creator. Whereas if you don't have Almiron in red hot form or Guimaraes is not at his best, they sometimes lack in terms of creativity. How do you expect this game to play out?
I really hope to see a very open game where they're going back and forth at each other. Kind of like how Matt kind of phrased it. Like, who doesn't want to see these kind of offensive threats go at each other? Like we've mentioned week in week out with Crystal Palace especially, is that they're just so offensively gifted, each individual. They just need to kind of put the pieces together and work as a team so that they become a more dangerous club. They have the pieces there to compete with the best clubs and give big clubs trouble, but they're just missing that cohesiveness. So that's where I think Newcastle will edge this one out. They faced each other a few times already. I definitely give the edge to Newcastle here. I think they're just a better team in general. They understand what each other, each player does very well, and they're not afraid to pass the ball. Movement off the ball is still great. But again, even when a guy like Guimaraes or like maybe Almiron or say Maximan aren't on their game, they have other players to pick it up. Kieran Trippier on any dead ball can change the game. You have Isaac who's back, who can really change the game if you give him a great ball. Well, it doesn't have to be a great ball. If you give him a chance inside the box, I think he has a fair shot at it at like any time. So yeah, I think just based on versatility, based on depth, based on being a team, I think Newcastle edged this one out.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Isaac coming back, so that they have that extra potency up front. In terms of transfers in, Newcastle really haven't made anything, but for transfer out, it was funny. It was picked up today. I think Nottingham Forest accepted a fee with. Nottingham Forest accepted a fee for Chris Wood, so that he would be joining them on loan for the remainder of the season. And a tweet was, Chris Wood belongs at Nottingham Forest because his last name is Wood, belongs at Forest. So that was funny to see. But I guess, Max, same question to you. Set piece from Trippier could be a decider, but hey, Elise scored a banger of a free kick too. So how do you see?
Stop. Let's talk about that.
That was a banger of a free kick. Boy,
it was a banger.
No keeper in the world stopping that. So yes,
well-deserved draw.
Yes, absolutely. I would argue they were the better team. Sorry, Gio, but David De Gea is the true force, and I think that was the separator. But in my opinion, but overall, we're not going back there. Going forward for this game, the interesting part with me for Newcastle is that I don't know if you guys saw the report, but Bruno Guimaraes is out for a couple of weeks. I think it is now. So he's going to be. He picked up an injury not in the last match, but the match before. So he missed out against Fulham, if I remember correctly. But it's not supposed to be months; it's supposed to be weeks. But still, a player like him in their midfield, which I would argue is already their weakest part of their team, having another loss there is very, very tough. And where you're talking about a creative piece, that's having Trippier from a set piece or creating something like that is probably their best avenue without that player. But I guess what I have to ask you guys is that we haven't seen Newcastle at all be aggressive. Do you feel like they should, similar to Arsenal, but obviously at a different level, try to go more all in for this season to kind of lock themselves in the Champions League? Because that could potentially take them to a different stratosphere of conversation for not just giving their money, but the type of competition they're going to be in. Is that potentially a way to set their standard of a club they want to be, right? So do you feel like in this January window, they should more go for, hey, we've lost Bruno for a couple of weeks. We can't have that. The gap right now, there is a gap between 4th and 5th. It's only 5 points. So do you feel like they should be more aggressive in this window to kind of solidify their place in that top 4?
That's interesting because, obviously we know the takeover that took place a couple years ago now, I think. And you'd expect by now Newcastle are splashing some cash. Interesting to note, they are in that top 4 position, so I would expect by now them to see at least a couple big names lined up. The only names that I've really seen linked are some midfielder players, sort of the Caicedos or maybe another couple players up front, but no real, I would argue, world beater. So, hey, maybe they are waiting for the summer and see how this season plays out. Maybe the owners are sort of seeing how things go before they splash the cash. Because if things go poorly and they did splash the cash here, and then the rest of the season goes downward, then they're stuck in a situation, right? So interesting to see. What do you think, Gio?
Um, Again, it's one of those. It's the same situation for those teams that are in the top four, is where you kind of don't want to spend too much cash, just because you don't know, if it's the right commitment. But I think for them, for Newcastle, because them being so new, like being in this new situation again, where they happen to be in the top four and they happen to be competing for European football. I think this is an opportunity they shouldn't let slip as a club. They should, definitely look at their options, and if it needs to be a little bit more money, think about it, because if you're in Europe, that cash flow is going to come in. So don't look too much, don't look too deep into it right now. Think about the future, because if you can get into the Champions League, if you can get into Europa League, even, that player almost pays for himself.
Yeah, it seems like for them they are ahead of schedule in sort of where they expect it to be. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach the rest of this transfer window, as well as obviously the summer one. But let's move past this one and let's just look back at the game that took place at the time of recording this afternoon. Manchester City beat Tottenham Hotspurs 4-2. But this game started in a really Man City dominated possession, but you really couldn't see them scoring or creating a lot of chances here. Both teams really. But, Gio, Tottenham scored 2 goals right before half to sort of put something onto Man City, so they would have to come out positive in that second half, which they did. What were your thoughts on that game overall, Gio?
I think there's only one way to describe this game and to kind of talk about it. It's a meme. It's a GIF even. They had us in the first half, I'm not going to lie. And then, they turned it off, and Man City obviously turned it on. Pep probably ripped them a new one. I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched, the Amazon series. You guys know how emotional Pep can get in the locker room. He probably tore them a new one, and quite understandably so. They didn't look great. It's not that Spurs looked fantastic either. City just didn't look great as a team. We're a little sloppy, in my opinion. But yeah, no, and that's what great teams do. They can recoup and come back out in the second half and really know what they're trying to do and execute, and that's exactly what they did. And it was a great game to watch if you're a neutral. Horrible game to watch if you're a Spurs fan, which is really not too many of you out there. So also understandable. So no, it was a great game. It was a great game.
Fair. Mac, you made notes here for today's game, and it was interesting to see Alvarez starting along with Haaland in that starting lineup. And it looked like they dropped a midfielder to sort of play in, I guess on paper you would see a 4-4-2 with Mahrez and Grealish on either side. Bentancur was back in the lineup for Spurs, but didn't really have the best game. I think he was taken off towards the end of the game. And yeah, there were some mistakes towards the end of the first half that let Spurs get that false sense of security in terms of that lead. But City came back, and Mahrez was, I think, the bright spot here. What do you think about that second half and how it played out?
Overall disappointing. It would have been nice to see the other team from North London help out the other team from North London. You should have seen some Arsenal fans' reactions online. It's like, for 10 minutes, you're like, I like Tottenham right now. They're doing us a favor. Big up them. But of course, they do what they do and they bottle it. So here we are. Overall, that second half I thought was a complete change in mentality. It's not normal. It's not kind of, let's say, if a manager's having impact at halftime team talk for his team performing so poorly in the first half, in his opinion, or coming back with a result, he might, of course, as Gio said, tear them a new one, but he also might make subs. Pep didn't. He kept the exact same team, and he would have had maybe the itch to bring on Kevin De Bruyne or Phil Foden, who were both on the bench and didn't feature at all this entire game. There wasn't an injury concern. It was just a decision to not play them. So that was very interesting that he still got that level of kick back, that level of response from those players that started the game, and they did it very much to not just get themselves back in the game, but overall push them in a position to win it, right? So it was very well done for them. I do think I just want to touch on, I guess, the two quick goals in the first half. Emerson Royale, he does something for me. I used to hate him because he's a horrible player, but it changed today for me. It made me realize something. It made me realize that if us three were Brazilian, we would be professional football players too. It makes anything possible. You know what I mean? He brings me hope. You know what? I'm an Emerson Royale fan from now on because he did score. Kudos to him. The worst goal anyone could. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Overall, though, literally a pylon could have done his job. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. I'm a fan. But sorry, go back to the second half. I think you're absolutely correct with Mahrez being a key player for Manchester City this game. He's definitely been in and out of the lineup, but he over the last couple of games has had a consistent run of game time, and it's good to see him really come out and really score and do well for Manchester City because he has had a little bit of hot and cold time so far this season because all the focus has been on Haaland, right? So it's good to see that there's other impact players that can get on the score sheet and be the difference between the two teams. So good to see that City still are not, because there's been a lot of talk recently over the last couple of weeks, not last couple of games, where, is Haaland making City worse? Are they not as good with him? Is he kind of diluting all their other stars' talent? A game like this really shows that that's not the case. So very, very nice to see if you're a neutral or a City fan.
That's for sure. The win is definitely something City fans would be happy to see. Gio, you and I touched on it a little bit, though. I think this is the fifth game in a row, Premier League game in a row, that City haven't kept a clean sheet, and they've had a lot of rotation in the back. I think Ruben Diaz did come on, I think, in the 90th minute to replace Haaland, but haven't seen him feature for a while. Back two of Stones coming back as well, and Akanji, Ake playing left back. Not the best, I guess, place to be at. I guess, Mac, how do you think Man City look defensively? Is there any worries for them, or do you think just the offensive power that they have, it will carry them through?
I think right now they're in a weird position because I think they might have just realized that they were a transfer window too late to restructure their wide backs because Kyle Walker's had injuries. Cancelo has been in and out, not playing in great form, so they're playing traditionally a center back at left back and a 18-year-old at right back. So it's tough there. I think overall, if you're asking me about Stones and Akanji, I think they're phenomenal. They've had great seasons individually for Manchester City and are great players. So that's not my concern. It's more so, I guess, I would say the wide backs and Ederson being caught out again by making another poor decision, right? I thought we would have a little bit of fun game and rank these mistakes. I don't know if you want to do that now.
Let's go ahead.
So overall, I want to see rank them 1, 2, 3 worst mistake, meaning like that is horrendous. You feel horrible. To 3, you know what? It's not the worst one here. So we all know what we were talking about from this game. So the Ederson mistake, which was horrendous, off the first goal, where he tries to play it to Rodri, on short, just outside the 18, but he has a man right behind him. And then in my opinion, the worst part about afterwards is that he makes that pass, makes a poor pass, doesn't go right to him, and then actually blames Rodri for the mistake, which was the funny part. Second one being Hugo Lloris, again, letting in a shitty goal. That would be Mahrez' first goal, near post. Mahrez is basically on the touch line for the corner kick line, the goal line, hits it near post, and Hugo Lloris looks at Ben Davies like, what the fuck are you doing? Because there was a slight nick on it. Third one, Longley, not having his radar on in FIFA, not realizing there's a man on behind him, takes the touch backwards to play a through ball, in essence, to Mahrez to score on a breakaway. I don't know which one's worst. They're all absolute shite, but what do you guys think? If you go 3, 2, 1.
So for me, the way you sort of put it out there is what I would go with. Ederson, you know the quality he has. If you guys have pressure on you, chances are you have Haaland one-on-one in the opponent half. Boot it. You shouldn't be getting caught in that. Lloris, we know he can make a mistake, so it's not a surprise. And then Longley, it was end of the game, kind of 80th minute around. So That's what I would say for me. What do you think, Joe?
Uh, I think I have to be in full agreement here. Ederson, come on, man, come on. That's like you're known to be able to play with your feet. And I know you want to get a little saucy because you're Brazilian, but get that shit out, you know. And bro, you're trying to win a game here. Like, don't worry about all that fancy stuff. Let's just get the ball out. And again, Holland's there, 1-on-1. I'm putting all my money on Holland anyway. So yeah, no, that's a silly mistake. And then Lloris again, back-to-back weeks with a mistake. You know, he saved all his mistakes for the Prem and not the World Cup. So I see what he did there. But you still lost the World Cup. So it sucks to suck, dude. And then yeah, Longley, check your shoulder, man. Come on. There's a reason why he doesn't play for Barcelona anymore. So
I think if you're Spurs right now, you're trying to figure out a way so he goes back to Barcelona right away. You're trying to get rid of this loan. It's not helping you at all. For me, I disagree a little bit. I think Hugo Lloris is a little bit worse because even though he doesn't actually, you don't see him yell at Ben Davies. He gives him like the come on look. You know, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Oh no, I got scored on the near post again, right? So I think it's similar reaction. But Ederson, I feel like that's a mistake that can't happen given the system that he's in. It's more likely to happen, and the only reason why it doesn't happen more frequently because he is so good. Versus Hugo Lloris is consistent. He's nothing. He's like Spurs and their trophies. They're consistent. They're just perfect. They always do the same thing over and over again. You can expect a mistake to come. So Hugo Lloris is just, it's obscene for a player. I don't know how Conte doesn't start looking at another goalkeeper this summer to replace him, or should have already. Seriously.
So that's my question. Just to wrap up this part, we're going to take a break very shortly, guys. But that's my question for you both now, and Gio first, obviously. Spurs are currently 5th out of the top 4, 33 points. They are on a run of 2 consecutive results, though they did lose to Arsenal and City, who are the top 2 teams in the table. Right. They are facing Fulham, who are just below them on 31 points, 6th place.
Right.
If they do not get a win here and get a loss, what do you think will happen with Spurs? Because at this point, it's getting towards the start of the end of the season, or I guess it's the middle of the season, but this really dictates how you finish the season. Spurs, obviously, Harry Kane has not signed a new contract because Conte hasn't signed a new contract. That's the report.
Right.
Could this derail their season? What do you think, Gio?
I think this is the start to the downfall. You know, they've been getting so lucky, you know, playing poor and still squeezing out wins. This is the downfall we've all been waiting for, or at least I've been waiting for. You know, Fulham are 6th place, I believe, and you know they're a club that's again hungrier than ever to try and do well and try to make, you know, European competitions and kind of put themselves in their own little competition. So. Would I be shocked if Fulham won? Absolutely not. I think there's very high turmoil right now in that Spurs locker room. And even a lot going on, you know, whether Conte's on the hot seat or not. So, you know, again, when the bad press is on you, it seems like the whole world's watching and now you kind of have to get a result here against a weaker side. So if they were to lose this game, I think it's safe to say that, you know, Harry Kane is heavily weighing his options. You know, maybe halfway out the door. If not, you know, his mentally he is out the door. You know, that can go for Conte. I ain't mad at that. But you know, the fact of the matter is, I think Conte is even halfway out the door. You know, he constantly makes these, you know, subtle comments about, you know, maybe Spurs just aren't good enough, or maybe I'm not good enough as a manager to take them to the promised land. And, you know, I think that's an easy cop-out for him to get himself fired. But, you know, obviously John Levy's like, not so fast. You're probably going to stay the whole season, bud. So, yeah, no, I think there's a lot of scenarios here. But I think, you know, the key players, especially players like Son, players like Harry Kane that are slowly getting up there in age and who obviously have trophy aspirations, are definitely weighing their options and are seeing what is best for them in terms of their career going forward.
Okay, Mac, I know you were very, very heavy on this is a fake Tottenham Hotspurs. Do you change your stance at all, or do you have anything to add to sort of?
Absolutely not. I think Gio pointed out, I think Conte is kind of like, he's like a partner in a relationship that wants to break up, but doesn't want to be the one that does the breakup. So they just keep saying stuff to semi get in trouble, but also not look horrible on social media at the same time. You want to play that little middle path, right? So I think Conte's playing it expertly, and I think he's done a good job there. It'll be interesting to see if Spurs don't make the top four, how much restructuring does happen, because I think there could be potential for a mass exodus, like the Suns, the Canes, the Hugo Lloris, like a changing of the guard. There needs to be looked at because those players are getting close to being on the wrong side of 30, and that's as you know, Ray, coming Liverpool, they have a similar policy where if you're above 30, we're not going to give you those long-term contracts because it's tough to build your team around that and expect consistent results for the long term. So I think Spurs are really going to have to look at themselves in the mirror in that way. And I wouldn't be surprised if they slip down further down the table below and be in a similar spot as Chelsea. Maybe it's not to the level of degree by the end of the season, but unless they do have a little bit of activity in the transfer window, I feel like there isn't. I don't see the potential for them, in my opinion, to scrape back into the top four.
Gio?
Yeah, no, I think it's hard, especially with a sort of a frugal owner or a frugal management, because they already semi-invested in Kulusevski, and they're looking to keep Bentancur and things of that nature. But when you don't invest the right way or kind of hear the feedback you're getting from your own players who at the start of the season or even at the end of last season were very invested into the team, and bring in the players that are necessary and sort of budget and bring in players like Longley and settling for players like Christian Romero and things of that nature that obviously are weaker links in terms of the Prem. Things like this are going to happen. So now that you have Kulusevski that you had to purchase, and then you want to keep Bentancur, but now Harry Kane and Son are the ones who want to leave. What do you do with a player like Kulusevski? What do you do with a player like Bentancur? So it almost puts him in an even worse position. So I think out of all the teams, so if you want to say, the bigger clubs, the typical top 6 clubs in the Prem, I think, if you're arguing like who has it worse right now, Chelsea or Spurs or even Liverpool, I think Spurs just put themselves, close, if not top. I think Chelsea are still the worst. Spurs than Liverpool. So I think they're slowly digging themselves a bigger hole, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. I don't think.
I think you could have just said London is red, and that would have sufficed. No.
No, I don't like giving Arsenal too much credit, bro.
Arsenal, London's red, boys.
All right, guys. So let's take one last break here, and then we'll just do a quick transfer roundup to end this podcast. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to finish off our podcast for today. Just quickly touching on some transfer activity happening around the Premier League. And with transfer activity, we're definitely going to be talking Chelsea being very active this transfer window. Mac, do you have some thoughts on what they've done so far?
I'm very confused, and this is the reason why I want to talk about it, is that I don't know how to phrase the conversation, because in terms of what Chelsea's done, just in terms of since Todd Bowley's taken over, they spent, in terms of their arrivals, it's about £466 million since he's taken over in the span of less than a full year. And it's not even 2 full transfer windows yet. So it's an obscene amount of money. And I think I was seeing this number is that combined over the last 4 seasons for Liverpool, as a comparison, they didn't spend that much in comparison to what he spent in less than 6 months. So it's absolutely crazy in terms of the amount of money he's being shelled out. And I don't know, is it irresponsible in terms of the amount of players they're bringing in? Because you have so many players with expected playing time. I don't know if you're going to create a situation or create an atmosphere for a manager to be successful with this type of changeover. We've seen it something similar in Nottingham Forest, where at a much lower level of degree, where they're having so many players being influxed to the team where they don't know who each other are. They're just kind of, every single time they go to practice, they should wear the "Hello, my name is," because they don't know. Everything's new to each other, right? There is no foundation for the team. I understand maybe they're trying to look for that with these players, but it seems very scattergun with the players that they're signing. Because how do you in this window, a front three you've signed these last two windows, Mudryk, Sterling, and Joao Felix. Is there any situation where all those three of those players play together? No, I don't see how that could ever work. Or how do you play Havertz, who's probably been your largest signing, best signing over the last couple of years, mount your academy kind of starlet? How do you? I don't see how the puzzle fits together, and I don't see a plan. So the reason why I want to bring this up to you is like, do you think it's irresponsible, scatterbrain, or do you think it's more so, you know what, they're just trying to take more shots at the dartboard and hopefully they'll hit a home, I don't know what a good score on a dartboard is, to be honest.
The bullseye?
I don't know why I use that as a reference. I apologize. But, do you know what I mean? It's like, what do you see this at the end of the day working well, or do they have to change their transfer policies and hey, we need to reschedule here because and rework what we're doing, because if they keep doing what they're doing, financial fair play is going to come fuck them in the ass, and they're going to have to start losing players, and they have to shell out maybe better players on the other side. So it'll be interesting to see what they'll do. Well, but what do you think about that, Gio?
I think it's just like that dartboard reference that you made. They're just hoarding a bunch of players and hoping one stands out and they're able to sort of build around that. And I think it's obviously not the best option to go. We've seen that happen, to Man U, where they just constantly buy offensive players and just hope they kind of take charge and kind of change the season around. But it's not going to work. You gotta have to start and have a plan and bring in the players that you need. And again, they are signing a bunch of offensive players that don't happen to be like very good midfielders. So I just don't understand their plan, if they have one. But it seems like they need a different board under Todd Bowley, to like an advisory board or something, because he is spending way too much, and I don't think he understands football to that extent. So maybe some better advisors would change the team. Maybe not new players, better advisors.
Yeah. So it's come out because Chelsea are facing Liverpool this weekend that Conte has returned to training, and so maybe Todd Bowley is saying, Conte's back. We don't need midfielders. We just need attackers, which obviously is not the way to go. And so, I think for him, he's just trying to make a statement saying, I'm here. Who's the biggest name? I'm splashing the cash out, and just to flex a little bit, but it obviously doesn't make sense. And the amount of change that will take place in the next 2 seasons, just 2 seasons in terms of players leaving and changes to the coaching staff and system, I don't see the vision. And so I really am interested to see how they can try to secure a European spot next season with so much turnover.
And then I want to preface this very selfish question with this time. Using that as a template, who do you think, which player has a larger impact this season for their new team? Trossard or Mudryk? And just want to preface, this season, who do you think has more of an impact for their team? Gio?
I'm 1,000% and going with Trossard.
Okay.
Again,
wait, sorry, Gio, go ahead. Sorry.
Again, it's just the Premier League transition always plays a huge part, and I was never a firm believer in Mudryk to begin with. I think he plays in a league where he's able to dominate, and there's a lot of open space for him to run. But that very well might not be the case here in the Prem, where you're going to get challenged and you're going to get hit hard, and you're going to have to know and understand how to play more technical football to get around these bigger players and not just run through them. There's not going to be as many holes as there is in, say, the Ukrainian league for him to run through. So I think he's going to struggle a lot early on.
Yeah, I can't disagree. My only thing is I don't see Trossard playing much for Arsenal. So there is every possibility that Mudryk has a fantastic Champions League run and maybe scores a couple goals, and that's maybe why he does more for Chelsea than Brighton Trossard does for Arsenal. Because once Gabriel Jesus come back and everyone's healthy at Arsenal, I don't see him really breaking into that team often. So, yeah, that's just my thought. Matt, your thoughts?
No, I think it's just an interesting for this year. It's tough because again, I don't know how Mudryk plays. I think it's more so in terms of next year is when he may want to be able to have a chance to be able to break out. He's in a tough spot because given where Chelsea are, he has a lot of pressure on him. So it's unfortunate for him that way. So this year, I would edge Trossard, but of course, being 6 years younger, he has more room to grow, and he definitely has a lot more potential. It'll be interesting if he does reach it though, as I know Gio put.
Okay, so I guess I have a couple of transfer that took place in the last couple of days that are just caught my attention. First one is Gio. You and I were talking about it, and it's a constant thing with West Ham being. Let me just quickly scroll down to the bottom of the league here. West Ham are currently 18th place in that relegation battle, but I'm not sure if you guys saw it. Danny Ings has signed from Aston Villa. A former Liverpool player who I actually really like. And so I'm just going to read out some of the players that West Ham have signed previously at that striker position. Obviously, Skamaka came in this season. They had Felipe Anderson. They also had Sebastian Haller not too recently as well. So they've always gone for that big European player that comes in to hopefully hit the ground running and get West Ham to top four, but it hasn't worked out. So I guess the question for you, Gio, what do you think about that Danny Ings signing? Because I think it's great business. He's not going to cost you a lot, and he's accustomed to the Premier League. You guys need goals, and he'll get you a couple at the very least.
You know, when you talk about my favorite London squad, Max giving me this look right now, but no. Definitely my favorite London squad. I think it's good business, of course. I 100% agree with you for all the reasons why I also picked Trossard over Mudryk is that, he's a proven scorer in the Prem and he can score you big goals. Look, maybe he can teach Skamaka a thing or two about the league. So, later on when they're out of the relegation zone next year, he'll understand how to score goals in the Prem. So yeah, no, great business, not too expensive, and you're getting a sound veteran player right there.
Okay, Mac, does this change West Ham's hopes to sort of get out of relegation?
No, because I think that they would for sure get out of relegation irrespective of what Danny Ings does. But I think this just gives them a different weapon. Do they want to, certain situations, play two up the top with Antonio, Skamaka, or one of them two with Ings? Because Ings has done that before. He's played well, depending on the team that they line up against. So I think that more where maybe he'll be utilized because it'll be a tough battle between the three of them to see who kind of gets that starting job to be, or if you're just playing with the one striker, right? So having the extra talent doesn't hurt. And they're definitely a team where I think everyone in the footballing world knows that they have a lot of quality on this team. They should be doing much better. There's just something wrong, and hopefully Ings coming in can be a little piece that helps nudge them forward, and they can get out of the season in staying in the league and reset for next year.
Okay, I just had one other one, which I'm just going to quickly mention just because it caught my eye. Wolves, as we know, have a new manager, and he has brought in a couple of players already, and the latest player that he has added to that Wolves team is Pablo Sarabia from PSG, which I think if you give Lopetegui some time, he will work his magic and hopefully get Wolves out of that relegation battle that they've been in the last couple of seasons with quality players such as Mateus Cunha and Pablo Sarabia coming in from different positions in different leagues. So just thought I'd mention that before we hand it over to Gio, who has a very special way to wrap up our podcast for today. So Gio, all yours.
Just thank you first and foremost. I'd like to take this time to make an announcement of sorts to my dear friend. Well, not my friend. To my dear defender, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. I know in previous podcasts I've said that maybe we should sell Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but I no longer feel that way. I think he's an integral part to the defense here at Manchester United. You've really proven yourself, and I think you deserve more time. With that being said, I'd like to apologize and, please stay. Don't look elsewhere. When when we talk about depth, we need players like you. You do a great job, and sorry for ever wanting to sell you. But yeah, stay at the club, be happy, keep doing your thing, chin up, bud.
Anyways,
that was beautiful.
That was beautiful. Amazing. With that being said, this concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. Our handle is @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, feel free to get in touch with us as well. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Tuesday when we review match day 21 of the Premier League games. On that note, thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Thank you, and Gio, next podcast, the Harry Maguire apology.
Gio?
Absolutely not. Peace out, guys.
And thank you guys for listening.